where the legends play. Willie 1550 and 98.7. Hello there, I'm Kenny Graves, and very proud to have on the phone with me right now a singer, songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, and prolific performer, Mr. Scotty Alexander. Scotty, how are you doing, sir?
My friend, I'm doing great. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
It's good to have you on. I did catch you in Katy last year and was blown away. Just a small set, you and a guitar player, man, and you just knocked it out of the park. A born performer, and you also had a lot of practice at it, and we're going to run through everything right quick. Before we get started, though, you know, I know you've been a Texas guy for a while now, and you're a big Buc-ee's guy. So when you stop at Buc-ee's, what's your preferred go-to snack there?
Has to be the jerky. We have enough junk food on the road to choke a horse. So we're always looking for something semi-healthy, which means I got to steer away from everything else and just get the protein and a cup of coffee and start driving again. But we've had a lot of fun with Buc-ee's on TikTok and social media, making fun of them, having fun with them. And those get a huge response because it's just part of, the Texas, South Texas, especially HEB culture.
Oh, yeah, absolutely it is. Well, let's jump in now. This is such a cool story you have. I'm glad to share this with the fans. I know you recorded your first vinyl record at the ripe old age of 6. So just how early did you start singing and playing music?
It started when I was 3 years old. My mama sewed some rhinestones to my little blue church outfit, and they put me in the local talent show, the elementary gymnasium. And I came across the stage and I sang "Walk Right Back to Me This Minute" by Anne Murray, which was a hit song on the radio at the time, which also dates me a little bit, but I mean, that's where it was. And when she went to take the rhinestones off the suit, I remember I was upset. I was crying, and I said, no, I got to get back on stage. You got to put those back on there. And that was the end of it, man. I was hooked from that moment on. By the time I was 6, my folks were insanely supportive, and we found a songwriter or two and recorded an entire vinyl album, got distribution on it, and released it pretty much nationwide. And it actually did really well. And it became a very novel thing. It was funny because Hee Haw wouldn't put me on at the time because I was too young. At that point, country music was dominated by 40-year-old men and grown women singing about DIVORCE. And they didn't have a space for young country talent at that time, so Hee Haw wouldn't have me on. But that's where it all started, man. That's where the fish hook got in my mouth, and been doing it ever since.
Great way to put that. What was your first instrument?
Very first instrument was fiddle. My grandfather passed away in '79, and we got willed the fiddle that he bought in 1914.
Wow.
So very old instrument. My grandfather, not my great-grandfather, but my grandfather was born in 1898. So he had my father late in life. My dad had me late in life. So by, 1982, I'm 6, 8 years old trying to squeak around on a fiddle that, was purchased at the turn of the previous century. And so it just really hooked me. I mean, I was exposed to a lot of old country because of that. Mm-hmm. And thank God, because that's where I spent my time, was trying to figure out the instruments. Guitar came next, and then everything else was in the basement. My folks looked like they had a used music store in the basement. So that's where I spent my time figuring out how to make it sound like the record.
And how many instruments do you play now? A lot.
Yeah, if my wife was here, she'd probably argue the number. She always gives me more credit than I actually feel safe in saying. But on most of my records, like if you listen to My First Beer or even up to the new single, Nothing Good Happens After Midnight, some of those I'm playing everything: bass, drums, banjo, acoustics, electrics, fiddle, mandolin. And in some of those records, I've hired some really great drummers and bass players and had them carry the load. But for the most part, I'm pretty proficient on 5. I might play more than that, but not where I consider myself fluent.
Well, who were your early musical influences growing up as a young man on the stage?
Oh, Kenny, I love this question. Okay. Jerry Lee Lewis.
The Killer.
And I remember seeing him on TV. That lit me up. And Jimmy Swaggart, being his cousin, he was on every Sunday. Mm-hmm. And they were these huge personality, charismatic showmen. And they were there was no seatbelts on these guys, man. And I just thought that was amazing. And then Glenn Campbell came along, and I saw what it was like to be composed and cool. and be a phenomenal world-class guitar player. And then when I was probably 12 or 14 years old, we did a stint where I was singing the national anthem on a very small handful of dates for Roy Clark. And that was like the best of both worlds. Roy was funny. Roy was cool. Roy could play his rear end off. Like, he was like such a good mix. So those guys were instrumental. Later in life, it became, Ricky Skaggs, Vince Gill, Steve Wariner. But that group I mentioned first, they were the early crop.
The Maestros.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, this ought to be fun because given your history, this could be anything. Where was your very first paying music gig?
The Elks Lodge in Staten, Oregon paid me $10 to sing. And I want to say I was, again, 5 or 6 years old, right about the time. And they paid me in $1 bills. And I'll never forget sitting in the back of a Chrysler Cordoba going down the road, and my mom handed me those 10 $1 bills. And I thought...
might as well been a million.
I was set for life. You ain't never going to make me stop doing this now. This is good.
That is awesome. That's a good story, man. A good story. Now, you appeared on the popular TV talent show Star Search. How was that experience for you, and at what age was this for you?
Man, I think I was 12 or 13, so, right around that busy time when I was a kid playing fairs. I didn't like the experience. It wasn't music. It was very much TV, and it was already kind of scripted who was going to win, who was going to lose, because your flights, everybody had to fly into L.A. to do that show, and everybody's flights were already booked, so all the talent knew each other. And we all saw that when we were leaving to go home, and that's exactly how it went down. And it was great to meet Ed McMahon. He was a jolly giant, and but I wanted to steer away from that after that. And I did TV somewhat after that. I did some, a Tide laundry commercial and that kind of stuff, and none of that really lit me up like just performing and recording did. But it's funny to look back on that tape. I sound like Alvin and the Chipmunks.
That's awesome, man. Now, you mentioned being such a big fan of Jerry Lee Lewis and his cousin, Jimmy Swaggart. But what about the other cousin? You performed with the late, great Mickey Gilley several times at the original Gilley's in Pasadena. So how did that relationship develop?
My mom's fever to let the world know about my talent led us to Pasadena. And we've actually lived there for a little bit. And she got me on stage at the old Gilley's in Pasadena and got me on stage with Mickey eventually. And it's funny, yes, you're right. That is the third cousin in that trifecta of talent. And, Mickey was super cool. And, we continued a relationship with the Gilley's nightclubs even to this day. In fact, for NFR this year, National Finals Rodeo out in Vegas, we'll be doing a couple of headlining nights at Gilley's at Treasure Island. And, that group has been wonderful to me, and there's nobody from this group that knew me from back then. It just seems how my path just keeps crossing with the name Mickey Gilley. So I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, it's hard to beat that, especially here in Texas. But I have to ask, though, since you did have the Gilley's experience, are you an Urban Cowboy fan?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Well, answer this for me. Pam or Sissy?
Oh, Sissy.
Okay, all right. Uncle Bob said Sissy, so okay, I'll go with that. Now, back in 1994, you moved to Las Vegas to co-host an award-winning production show. So tell us about that.
Your homework is outstanding, Kenny. Yes, I was 19 years old. I got offered a chance to go where the country boom was going at the time, which was Las Vegas, was Sin City, and it was phenomenal. I think there were 6 full-blown production shows in that town by 1994. Full of tight jean, mullet-wearing, pickers and grinners. Like, there was guys leaving the road from big Nashville recording artists just to go to Vegas because the amount of money that they were throwing at all of us to go play there. And it was phenomenal. It was a very, very trying gig, but it taught me how to work hard because it was 2 shows a night, 6 nights a week. I think I did that for almost 2 years before I took a week off. I mean, it was a real grind. But I met some wonderful people, and of course met my wife during that period. So it was a great experience overall.
All right. Now, in 1999, this is fantastic. You went to work for the legendary Wayne Newton. So tell us about that time and your relationship with Wayne.
Mr. Newton's like a father to me, on and off stage. He became over those 7-8 years that I was with him. And our phone rang one day, and Wayne was looking for a guitar player. I had come recommended by the circle that he trusted and asked around. And by that time, I guess I built a pretty good reputation there in town and West Coast, and he kind of wanted everything that I did. He wanted the multi-instrumentalist, singer, guitar player, fiddle player, banjo, mandolin. Like that's his story. You know, he kind of does all that. And so once we teamed up, I mean, we immediately started doing comedy bits, and the Devil Went Down to Georgia and dueling banjos and Tennessee or Whiskey River. And we just added this huge element to his show that he'd been missing for a long time, because he kind of got into the Elvis and big band world. And so now all of a sudden, you know, there's a 22-piece orchestra, 21-piece orchestra behind us, and now I've got horn players trying to play Devil Went Down to Georgia. They were not very appreciative of that, but it was we had a blast. We toured the planet. We worked for the USO. We did films. We did TV. We did, of course, always had a residency in Vegas at some major hotel, either the Hilton or the Stardust or Harrah's, or and we went to Australia. We did 22 countries total. And it was really 8 years of insane entertainment education, and you know, to this day, I still love him to death.
Got your PhD in music and performing there, I guess.
Well, yes, in a lot of what to do and some of what not to do. You know, because Wayne liked to work himself to death too. You know.
Well, being a red-blooded, patriotic American young man at the time, tell me about the USO tours. I always found those stories fascinating. How did you enjoy it?
Changed my life. It's not an over-exaggeration to say it changed my life. We were playing, I think we were playing Harrah's in Atlantic City. I know we were in Atlantic City, and it was right after 9/11, and we had just come back from Hawaii with Wayne, and we'd ended up on the West Coast. We're doing a big show out there at a casino, and he brought a small group of us in, and he said, the USO's asked me to take over as the celebrity chairman and put the very first show together that's going to go to Kandahar. And the Marines had just taken the airport like the day before or even that day. And he just said, he goes, anybody who doesn't want to go, I understand, but who wants to go? And there was 5 of us, I think, that raised our hand, or 4 of us that raised our hand. And I remember getting on the phone with Lisa that night and just saying, honey, I'm not coming home. We're going to finish this tour on the East Coast, and then we're going to go into the War Theater. And I said, they wouldn't tell us where we were going. We couldn't tell anybody where we were going. They waited until we got on the C-17 and were headed overseas in order to give us our itinerary, because that time the only way you could really make that sort of international call was on a sat phone. And we went over and we played, and we were in that airport. If you remember that airport, it was all over the news. It had the big stone archways in the beginning, the entrance of the airport right after the Marines took it. And we were performing. It was the CENTCOM General Franks, 4-star General Franks, and Mr. Newton, Neil McCoy, myself, 2 other musicians. And I want to say we had a representative. We had the Dallas Cowboy Cheerleaders. There were 2 of them there. And so it was a very, very compact little USO show. And as we were performing, we heard shots start to ring out very close. I mean, I grew up hunting and shooting, so I know how far a round is when it goes off. I mean, it was very close. The Marines covered us up, took our guitars right off our neck, threw us in the back of the C-17, and we took off in total darkness. And there was a small pocket of Taliban that had been hiding, that hadn't, in some sort of underground room or something that hadn't been cleared by the Marines yet. And when they heard the music, they thought that'd be a good time to come out swinging. And of course, they didn't last very long, because everybody in attendance had just come out of the field. They were dirty and still had live rounds in their guns watching the show. I mean, it was hair raising. But that experience and those kind of stories from Mortar Attacks on went on for another, gosh, however long. I mean, we did the whole thing for probably 7 years of the USO tours like that. And you come home, and I'll finish that very long answer in this way. When you've been there and you've seen it, you never watch the news the same. It just changes you forever.
Yeah, well, many thanks to you and all the performers that always go out and offer their services and time with the USO. It's important for the men and women serving over there. So my hat's off to you, sir. Now, you and your wife also had your own Vegas show for several years. So how was the experience of being a Las Vegas headliner?
That was a blast. We had a show that ran 4 nights a week. Once I had left Mr. Newton, we were offered a contract by a local casino there in Vegas to build us our own little miniature showroom. And we had an absolute blast doing that because you're home every night. Our kids were little then, so there was a lot of benefit to that. And we rode that right up until the time that the market crashed. And, of course, Vegas was the biggest part of that bubble. So we didn't have a show once part of the hotel shut down. But, yeah, that was a very, very fun time.
Well, you made your way to Nashville, Tennessee, and found success there as well before finally settling here in the great state of Texas. You released your first solo studio album, Guilty, back in 2019. So tell me how it felt enjoying your first music project that was all you and your music.
Scary, because you're not standing behind anybody anymore. It's your name on the marquee, and it's your reputation, and it's your talent. And if it's good, it's good. And if it's not, and people don't like it, it's on you. And that was the first thing that I felt in that experience. And then by the time we got through the Road We're On album, I started to lose some of the shackles and nervousness. And then by the time we got into our little acoustic cover record, I started just really like swinging freely and just feeling very comfortable. And now going into the new material that we've got that we'll start streaming, and then the rest of the albums that'll come out starting in 23. I feel like a horse in the gate, just ready to run. This is the best stuff I've ever made, and like anything, you seem to get more comfortable with it the longer it goes.
I understand you're chomping at the bit. That latest studio album is called Road We're On. Has been very successful for you so far, correct?
It has been. Yeah, it has been very successful for us, and there's a track on there that was produced by my buddy Chuck Cannon, legendary songwriter, and then for the most part, it's me and some of my friends. Brian White, 90s country artist Brian White, played drums on that whole record for me. And it's a labor of love. And that story, The Road We're On, couldn't be truer. You know, my wife was a very successful model and then packed it all up to raise kids and follow a kid country singer. And I'll forever be grateful for that.
All right. Well, where were you at the first time you heard your music on the radio?
I was I think it was Laredo, and I had done the beginning of a radio tour, and it was one of my first stops, and we were spinning the song My First Beer, and we finished that interview, and the DJ looked at me and he goes, "Have you ever heard your song on the radio?" And I said, "No." He goes, "Hurry, you got 30 seconds. And I ran out of the studio, and I ran out, and I started the car, and I sat there. And any artist in any interview that I've ever heard, we all have the same reaction. We cry. Mm-hmm. It's just overwhelming to be a part of y'all's world where when you guys spin our records and we hear them, it's like, it's mind-blowing. I don't even know how to describe it. It just gives you chills and makes you feel like all that work was for something."
Absolutely. It's a milestone in every artist's career, always.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you also have a brand new all-acoustic 11-track cover album out now. It's called Herb's Hat Shop. So tell us about that special project.
Herb's Hat Shop is something that I've been wanting to do for a very long time. It is just standard classic country music. George Strait, Glenn Campbell, Colin Ray, Garth Brooks, Charlie Daniels. Those are some of the artists that we covered on there. And I didn't want to do it full band and big production. I wanted it to be as raw as we could. So we went into, the reason it's called Herb's Hat Shop is my buddy owns Herb's Hat Shop in Blanco. And there's one in San Antonio as well. And in fact, I'm going to do a little acoustic set there tomorrow at the Blanco shop. Anyway, that we just hung a microphone and went in and started recording and came out with this album, Labor of Love, to share with people that like the classics.
It's a great concept. I like it. Well, the latest single is called Nothing Good Happens After Midnight, so tell folks about that one.
Well, you should write what you know, right? That's what they tell you. You should write what you know. So I don't want to say how old I was, but I was young. We'll say that I was not 21 and I was living at home, and I may or may not have been in my junior year in high school. And so I'd gone out drinking with the boys. And instead of just staying out at a friend's house or whatever, I decided to come home and pull off the fact that I may or may not be sober, and that didn't end well for me and the toilet and everything else. So I got up the next morning, and my mom was sitting in the kitchen, calmly waiting for me. And she proceeded to, throw everything in the book at me. And she finished her little tongue lashing with, you should have been home when you said you were going to be home. You should have been home by 10, 11 o'clock. And she said, you come strolling in at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. She goes, nothing good happens after midnight. And I'm sure everybody's mom has told them that at one point or the other, but I got it in the middle of a tongue lashing for coming home wasted. And and so it's really stuck with me.
Well, like you said, you write about what you know, right?
That's it.
Well, the upcoming single that's going to be out here at not too far distant future is called Water Tower Town. I've heard that one live. That's been in the works for a while, so you're finally going to have it out. So tell us about that one.
Water Tower Town is a series of characters that I know and have lived in hometowns that I have lived in, here in Texas. And we all share that common thread that there was probably a water tower in your hometown, and there was some of these characters that we sing about, that I sing about in a song that I wrote about. And it's Texas life in a changing world. And I think that's the key to that song is, even though it's a trip down everybody's hometown, it's a look over several decades where, you can't count how many burned out towns there are in this state because of the money moving around. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they spring back up, sometimes they dry away. But that's what that true story is, Water Tower Town. It'll be out right after Halloween.
Outstanding. Well, you've been playing everywhere on the Road We're On tour, and you're going to be a part of the big 1111 Music Fest in Conroe. You'll be there on Friday, November 11th. You can get tickets at 1111musicfest.com. For those who haven't seen you live before, what can they expect at a Scotty Alexander show?
First thing is there'll be a lot of high energy. We don't set back on our heels. We really like to have a good time when we come out. So there'll be fiddle playing. There'll be a lot of guitar slinging. There'll be singing. There'll be some nice moments of acoustic guitar and ballads too, and some sentimental times. And then we always like to end in a flurry like the 4th of July. And so that's our MO. If you've never seen us, I would encourage y'all to come out. And it's a really, I'm very proud of the show and proud of my band, and can't hope that everybody gets a chance to come out on 11/11.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you with the full band. Like I said, when I saw you, it was just you and a guitar player, but I've never seen someone play lead fiddle and vocals at the same time. That blows my mind to this day. That was just phenomenal. But it's top shelf entertainment, my friend. I got to say that. And I'll touch on this, Scotty. You do a great job on your TikTok page. So in today's world, because you remember pre-social media, how important is it now for an artist to have a strong presence on social media?
It's, as a friend of mine put it, he goes, it's free. Why wouldn't you want to do it? Mm-hmm. 20 years ago, I would have spent tens of thousands of dollars per year to buy ads and magazines and radio time, maybe even TV time, in order to get your face and name and music out there. And now it's free. So if you're not taking advantage of it on all platforms, I think you're really missing the boat, because, you know, people on TikTok think I'm a comedian, and, oh, by the way, I'm a singer. And and then, you know, folks on Instagram and Facebook, they've got a little bit more of the story, because, you know, we don't necessarily put the same content on there. You know, a lot of that is just show-related stuff or story-related stuff. But, you know, TikTok's whole thing is to be funny. That's what people go there for. It's truly a release from your everyday life to go laugh at other people. At least that's what my feed is. And so that's what we concentrate on there.
Well, I do want to ask about this. The voting just closed this past week, but you're up for Fiddle Player of the Year and the Texas CMA Awards. So when are they going to announce that?
That comes out in November as well, and I believe that's 13th or 14th we're going to find out. Maybe it's the 13th. That sounds right. The 13th we're going to find out about that. Last year I won Guitar Player of the Year for TCMAs, and this year we're nominated for Fiddle Player of the Year. So those are some big honors, and, you know, very talented folks in that group. And you know, I have a very beautiful, shiny, custom-made belt buckle that says Guitar Player of the Year. It'd be nice to add the Fiddle Player for the matching set.
Absolutely. Well, I wish you the best of luck, my friend. And tell folks how to keep up with you and your great career.
First spot for everybody, laptop or phone, you can go to ScottyAlexander.com. And for anybody on Facebook, look for the little blue check mark in Pages. It'll say Scotty Alexander. Same on Instagram, little blue check mark, Scotty Alexander. And then on TikTok, it's Scotty Alexander Music. And between all of those, you'll see our show posters. Every month we put out a full page list of where we're performing that month and when the new music's coming out, and hopefully coming to a town near you.
Well, I look forward to seeing you at 1111 Music Fest. It's over the weekend of Veterans Day. So, Scotty, all my best and continued success on your music journey, my friend. I thank you for taking the time.
Oh, I certainly appreciate all the time and the homework, and I look forward to meeting you again in person, and thank you for this time here. We'll see you very soon.
You bet. Keep up with him online. You won't regret it. For the awesome Scotty Alexander, I'm Kenny Graves on Willie 1550 and 98.7.